Tonight, Toronto's mayoral candidates carry on campaigning after the arrest of a suspect charged with threatening to shoot them.
But I will not be intimidated by any threat.
We'll just have a more heightened awareness of our surroundings.
My team has reviewed our security protocol.
We'll have the latest on what we've learned about the suspect and whether candidates will be tightening security after the incident. And
certainly are hearing of closures. Almost every weekend, you'll get an announcement that yet another emergency room has closed.
More rural Ontario ERs are facing closures or scaled back hours this weekend as a shortage of doctors and nurses continues to impact the healthcare system. Plus,
the safest place you can be is where you're being watched by a lifeguard.
Lifeguards will be reporting for duty at city beaches starting tomorrow. We'll have some tips on how to make sure your day at the water is safe. Threatening to shoot candidates in Toronto's mayoral by-election made his first court appearance today. He was arrested late last night, just hours after a threat forced the cancellation of a mayoral debate. Ali Chiasson has more now on the suspect and how the candidates are reacting.
Police allege 29-year-old Junior Francois Lavagesse threatened the mayoral candidates twice yesterday, once near Mortimer and Greenwood Avenue in the East End, but police won't say where.
Because as you may be able to appreciate, this is the place that two of our witnesses are at, so we won't be divulging where exactly these were made.
The other threat was allegedly made through social media. Because Lavagesse was allegedly brandishing a weapon, the threat was deemed credible, and candidates were notified while police investigated.
The arrest yesterday was at 9:30 p.m. in 42 Division.
Police found the weapon he had on him was ultimately a pellet gun. Today, Lavagesse appeared in court, having been charged with uttering threats, 2 counts of weapons dangerous, and failure to comply, relating to another criminal charge earlier in the spring.
Well, I was told by direct phone call.
Former police chief and candidate Mark Saunders says he was kept in the loop.
You know, I want to thank the Toronto Police for an amazing job that they did. Quick investigation, making an apprehension, and moving forward. Now allowing, you know, the candidates and more importantly the volunteers an opportunity to feel a little safer.
I certainly feel more relieved today, knowing that that person has been apprehended.
Today, some of the candidates said it was a bit of a wake-up call.
So my team has reviewed our security protocols. In some cases, we have enhanced those security protocols.
Anna Bailau thanked police and kept it moving.
Yesterday, I was in contact with them throughout the day on several occasions, making sure that we were, following their advice on every event that we had. But like I said, I will not be intimidated as a candidate, and I'll definitely not be intimidated as your mayor.
Anthony Furey says it justifies his pledge to invest more in policing.
Well, I think what we saw is that the Toronto Police Service takes their role seriously, and I want to invest more in our officers.
I'm grateful for the police.
Candidate Olivia Chow said it shone a light on the social strife that can lead to crime.
I think it's important to create a city where, in a big city, we'll have crime, but to have a city that has the social conditions that have fewer crimes, and so we could all feel safe.
According to social media accounts, Lavagesse was at one point a youth leader, running a local record label. He's back in court on Monday. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, are you still trying to decide who you should vote for in this election? We've got you covered. Head to our website to check out how Toronto's top mayoral candidates compare on different election issues. You can find our interactive page at cbc.ca/Toronto. And next Tuesday at 11:30 a.m., I will be hosting a live mayoral debate with the leading candidates. You can watch that at cbc.ca/Toronto or on CBC Gem and YouTube. Okay, so it is perfect weather to head to the lake, and starting tomorrow, the city will have lifeguards on duty at 9 Toronto beaches, including Woodbine Beach, and that's where we find Talia Ricci live for us tonight. So, Talia, first of all, what's it like out there tonight?
Well, Maribel, it's still pretty hot out here and suddenly actually very windy, but people have been taking advantage of this weather all day. Woodbine Beach has been packed. Even the transit to get down here was packed all day today. Now, starting tomorrow, there will be lifeguards on site here and beaches across the city from 10:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. up until Labor Day. Because of this warmer weather, both the city and the Life Saving Society wanted to offer some additional water safety tips.
It really is the perfect day for this.
We went in the water and we swam, and then we ate some snacks.
We played volleyball, ate on the boardwalk, swam, and just had fun.
Starting tomorrow, these lifeguard stations will be staffed to help keep swimmers safe. The city says full supervision of its 10 beaches will begin in July with about 135 lifeguards.
The pandemic definitely had an impact on training and the development of several streams within our business, but especially aquatic staff. We've had great recruitment efforts to the point where we're fully staffed and ready to go for the summer.
The province announced a change to help address staffing shortages, which vary across Ontario. It lowered the minimum age requirement to become a lifeguard from 16 to 15 years old, which aligns with updated requirements from the Life Saving Society certification course.
So we've been certifying lifeguards at 15 for the last few years, and we are very pleased with this decision. It should help ease the instructor and lifeguarding shortage that we have been experiencing recently.
As the weather gets warmer, the Life Saving Society and the city have these additional pieces of advice.
We want to discourage parents from actually bringing floaties, beach balls, inflatables that you can sit on. They tend to get caught in the wind and swept out very far. Little ones often will chase after those and end up over their head and into some trouble.
Just being aware of the conditions themselves, the Toronto's waterfront, the Great Lakes generally, they present themselves much like an ocean environment where conditions can change very quickly. And so people need to be aware of that, and they need to pay attention to the flags, the color of the flags, and the fact that they should be swimming in supervised areas.
Now you can check the beach's water quality on the city's website. The splash pads opened on May 20th, but if it's those city outdoor public pools you're waiting on, those will all be fully open by June 30th. Maribel?
Enjoy your night at the beach, Talia. Thank you. It is exactly the weather where you want to have a body of water nearby. You can plunk yourself in and cool off.
Yeah, and be able to just relax. And the only thing is, I just want to make sure everyone's aware there are some of these thunderstorms that were in the forecast kind of bubbling up. And so they're not widespread, but they could really kind of change your plans very, very quickly. So everyone needs to be mindful of that tonight. We are still in this heat warning through the GTA. And it's not just because of the heat in the daytime highs. We were up to 32.3 degrees, by the way, and we're not that far off it now, but a new record again today, just like we had a record yesterday, so 2 days in a row. But it's about the temperatures at night too, and tonight they're still going to be on the warm side, but then we really see things changing tomorrow with breezy easterly winds and the temperatures cooler. There's a look though at some of these current numbers, and it's not just where the temperature is. How about the humidex values? Not only 35, Markham, you're over that hump at 36 in terms of what it feels like. But check out my radar here and some of these cells that have popped up. So some heavy downpours and also the risk of some small hail in here. And you see what's happening is they've been through the Kawarthas, Peterborough region. There were some warnings earlier into eastern Ontario. A lot of lightning strikes here. And this is all migrating westward towards the GTA. So severe thunderstorm watch for the area in yellow. And I'll have more on this coming up and more on the cool down coming our way too, Maribel.
Okay, so we'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
And with those temperatures soaring over 30 degrees today, it was also a perfect day to relax on a patio. But hundreds of restaurant owners in the city are still waiting to set up their patios through the city's Café TO program. As Greg Ross tells us, many of those restaurants already had patios in place for weeks, this time last year.
I'm looking at your patio space here, and it's got cars parked in it.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because we've missed about a month of patio space.
Pablo Mazo owns La Cubana restaurant on Ossington Avenue. He says he started the application process with the city back in February to install a Café TO patio on the street in front of his business. He's still waiting for the go-ahead to begin setting up.
It just becomes so much red tape. It's kind of like the Wild West meets like bureaucracy, you know, all mixed together. But the really big issue is just how much of the nice weather we've missed.
Just up the street at Pizzeria Libretto, they're in the same boat, and they say even when they get the go-ahead to open their patio, it's still going to take another 2 weeks to set up with the new regulations in place that require them to install an accessible platform.
So we're still kind of waiting for the go-ahead date where we can get equipment, get everything in place to start the construction and get staffed up. So yeah, it's just a waiting game still.
The city says they'll have about 35% of the more than 400 Cafe Tio patios up and running for this weekend. At this time last year, they had about 90% of the patios already in place, even with hundreds of more restaurants taking part a year ago.
This year, what's a little bit different from last year is council asked us to complete spring clean.
Because of the cleanup, crews didn't begin installing safety infrastructure for Cafe Tio until May 15th, 2 weeks later than they started last year. The city says it's also taken more time because restaurants now require a permit to take part in the program, and they must meet all safety requirements.
We have to go through and do our diligence on those safety setups, and our staff are working around the clock.
Restaurant owners say that process should have started sooner.
Why not start this program and the application process in January, where there's downtime?
Restaurant owners tell us that every week they have to wait to get their patios up and running is a huge hit to their bottom line.
We're talking, I don't know, thousands, obviously, thousands of dollars every day on these beautiful days.
The city says they expect to have about 90% of Cafe Tio patios up and running by June 15th. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
You may have noticed some mayoral candidate lawn signs popping up around the city. The election for the city's top job is into a new phase, just as polls consistently show one main candidate as the front runner. I spoke with our municipal affairs reporter, Sean Jeffords, about how the election campaign is shaping up with less than a month to voting day. So, Sean, campaign advertising is kicking into high gear now. What is it that we're going to see?
Well, we've started to see signs pop up around the city, and that's a big part of this air war that we're going to start to see over the next couple of weeks, where campaigns really intensified their direct outreach to voters. You know, they're really trying to break through and make an impact. The campaign has been on for 2 months, but I think people are just starting to really tune in, and the way they will do that is they'll start to see these signs. And you can measure some things about campaigns and their strength based on those signs. It's a bit anecdotal, but it's there.
What are the measures, though, that are in place that are maybe telltales that we're going to now see?
So we're going to start to see, you know, those signs tell us how successful people have been at fundraising, because it costs a lot of money to make the signs, and it'll tell you a lot about the organization that's behind a candidate. You know, you have to have a lot of volunteers, and you have to have some level of support, frankly, to get those signs out across the city. So, you know, we can measure the organization behind a candidate and what it's going to do to push them over the finish line, whether that be successful or not.
So in terms of the race then, the air wars, the campaigning, the lawn signs, what do you think that's going to say about the race? In particular, when it comes to the front runner, which by all polling accounts, it seems, remains Olivia Chow. What impact is this going to have now on that?
Well, I think there's a lot of strategy that we're going to see play out. I mean, this is the time in the campaign when most experts would say you're going to see the polls move, you're going to see support shift, if it is going to shift at all. And certainly the polls, you have to take them with a bit of a grain of salt. In aggregate, what we are seeing, and I think this is the most important finding you can take, is that Olivia Chow is the front runner in all of them. The campaigns are focused in on her in the debates and their attacks. And I think what they want to do over the next little while is they want to start to punch through with their advertising, and they're probably going to go a bit negative, and they're going to attack Olivia Chow in these campaign ads to chip away at her support and try and draw it to them. And they've got a fine window to do it here. So we've got 3 weeks left in the campaign, but we've got a week left before advanced polls open. So they're trying to thread that needle and really reach voters before they start to cast their ballots. So there's a lot of work to be done on these campaigns.
In terms of the reliability of polling and what to believe to the extent to which we can, How does that sort of almost dictate the race and these strategies?
You know, it can go a lot of different ways, but I think the main takeaway that I would say, and the experts that I spoke with this week about the reliability of the polling would suggest that you take it all up with a grain of salt. I mean, the polling methodology, there's some question about the way that these Toronto polls are being conducted. So they're being done with IVR, so that's interactive voice response. It's a robocall, essentially.
Okay.
And I know, you get a robocall on your phone, it comes up, it's pretty obvious, sometimes it's filtered out, or you don't answer it. So what that means is that you may not, if you're a pollster, get a sample size that reflects Toronto. In particular, CBC's research department tells me that they're concerned that these IVR polls don't reach young voters. You know, they're a little more sophisticated, they may not pick up the phone when a robocall comes through. So that means maybe you're not tracking the young vote in the city quite the way that you should. Pollsters would counter and say, well, we can weight our samples. We can change things to make this IVR poll more accurate and weight the quantity or the quota, a little bit more and lean it young so that that is more representative of the vote. So all that to say, you have to take the polls with a grain of salt. You take them more broadly and you look at the trends that run through them, like Olivia Chow running first.
So then how much of a concern is it that the polls are reported on, and that's what Torontonians, that's part of the information they'll be receiving. So I guess how much of a concern is it that these then become self-fulfilling prophecies, methodology aside?
It's such a good point. And the pollsters, the experts would say, look at the polls, look at how they're weighted, dig into the data if you have the time, and look at where they're drawing their samples from. Are they polling the full city? Are they polling all the demographics that you would want to see in these polls? Are they getting young people? Are they getting older people? Are they reaching people in Scarborough or North York? But the campaigns are concerned, I would say. You know, one of the really interesting findings from the experts that I spoke with was this actually could have a suppressing vote or a suppressing effect on Olivia Chow's campaign. You know, it's a bit counterintuitive. You would think, well, people look at the front runner and, well, of course, that's how the vote's going to turn out. In some instances, it actually could work to suppress the vote. It could make her voters complacent. They might look at it and say, well, she's got such a big lead, I don't have to go out and cast a ballot on June 26th. I'm really busy. So the main takeaway, I think, is that this is actually really up in the air. There's going to be potentially a smaller voter turnout because it's a by-election, which means the margins could be tight, which means every vote is going to count. So I would say ignore the polls. You've got to get out and vote.
Which is a perfect thing, I think, to leave our conversation on every vote counts, so go out and do it.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Mirabelle.
More emergency departments in rural Ontario are facing temporary shutdowns this weekend. This after the permanent closure yesterday of the ER in Minden. However, as Lorenda Redicop reports, at least one health unit in the province won't face the same fate this summer thanks to an 11th hour funding extension.
The Wingham District Hospital ER, northwest of Kitchener, is closed as of this morning for 24 hours. The hospital says it's due to a shortage of doctors. In nearby Huron-Perth, they say the shortage is both doctors and nurses. Seaforth Hospital's ER will close for 24 hours starting tomorrow. Then the ER at the Clinton Public Hospital closes the following day for 24 hours.
We are very stretched. And in a small hospital, even one or two gap in our resource really hinders us a lot more than a larger center would.
It's an area that also had closures last summer. What's worse this year is fewer doctors, and they feel the whole summer could be hard to fill.
I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a tough one. So the forecasting is a rough one, I would say, from our standpoint in regards to the resources of our physicians and our nurses. So it's really planning now.
The Ontario Nurses Association says every weekend it's hearing about new closures.
You know, we need to have policymakers make changes to keep nurses in the ERs and in these departments to keep them open. That's the problem. Right? We don't have enough staff.
Meanwhile, another hospital network in the north says things have improved there due to new funding from the province, just confirmed yesterday.
We see a tremendous difference.
The CEO of the North Shore Health Network says within a day he filled 27 physician spots. The network has hospitals in 3 different locations. One in Thessalon has had recent ER closures due to not enough doctors. Now the province brought back a locum program, giving incentives to physicians backfilling from other areas.
I expected our locations to have closures, rolling closures throughout the summer. I no longer expect that to be the case. I would be surprised if we have a closure now over the summer, which is wonderful news for our communities and wonderful news for the system.
The program is now extended until the end of September. He'd like some type of incentive made permanent. In Huron-Perth, it's a program that only one of their 2 hospitals facing closures qualifies for. The other does not, as the ER isn't operating 24 hours a day. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
There's a brand new long-term care home in the Jane and Finch community ready to welcome residents. It's part of the Ontario government's program to build more care homes more quickly, but with a high quality of care. Meg Roberts got a tour of the new facility.
So this is it. This is it. Last item that has to go up, so we're really excited.
A little wallpapering is all that is left to be done before Humber Meadows officially opens its doors to the people who will call this home.
Right now we're actually on our ground floor, which is the meadow. So our names of our floors are inspired by the meadow that we're standing in.
Humber Meadows has 320 private rooms and each floor has access to outdoor space. It's part of the province's pilot project that uses hospital-owned land to build much-needed LTCs. There are almost 40,000 people waiting for a long-term care bed in Ontario.
These beds won't sit idle. There won't be a time that I can foresee that we will have a bed that we put into abeyance because we don't have someone to fill it. And this is just the other side. That's nice. All of our rooms have an automatic nightlight that goes on as it starts to get dark. And as you enter the resident bathroom, if we hadn't triggered the sensor, it actually turns on when people come into the room.
The home was built with a new generation of long-term care in mind. There's a bariatric care program, in-house dialysis, a salon that will operate 5 days a week on location, and a spiritual space. Each resident will be able to control the temperature in their room.
So that's revolutionary for long-term care.
It's also the little touches. Each floor is assigned a color. It's green here on Douglas Furway floor. Staff will wear the same color as the floor they work on.
So if there's any unsurety of what floor they live on, the name of their floor, all the color also ties through and it will help them to acclimate themselves to their new home.
The executive director believes the higher standards here is the reason it had no trouble recruiting frontline workers.
We hope to be a benchmark just because we are newer. We're built to the new design standards and we're able to offer different things that other homes don't have.
Humber Meadows is the second long-term care home the province has built under its accelerated build project. The next one in Mississauga is expected to open later this year. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
York Regional Police have charged 3 men in connection with a February drive-by shooting in Schaumburg.
Between May 18th and June 1st of this year, investigators from the York Regional Police Serious and Organized Crime Bureau executed a number of search warrants in the city of Toronto. And as a result, 8 people were arrested and charged. 3 of those people were charged with conspiracy to commit attempted murder, as well as attempted murder, as well as participate in an organized crime group.
The arrests were part of an investigation called Project Rebellion. Police say the suspects are believed to be members of the Mara Salvatrucha Street Gang, also known as MS-13. They were hired by an organized group to kill a man. Police say the suspects mistakenly targeted the wrong person. A 65-year-old man was taking his dog on a morning walk on February 26th when he was shot at 13 times. He was taken to hospital with critical injuries and is recovering. A fire in Mississauga has sent 1 person to hospital with serious injuries. The 2-alarm fire broke out at an abandoned home sales center near Hurontario and Dundas around 10:30 last night. Firefighters pulled an unconscious man from the building. He is now in stable condition in hospital. It's believed several unhoused people lived in the building. The investigation into the cause of the fire continues. And another Toronto teen is facing charges after police allege he shot off firecrackers on 3 separate buses. Police say the incidents happened last week on a number of TTC buses. A 16-year-old boy is now facing charges. This comes after video surfaced of a teenage girl shooting off fireworks on a bus on Tuesday. Police have arrested and charged a 14-year-old in that case. She has been charged with mischief endangering life. MPP Chris Glover calling on Ontario to declare June 2nd as the provincial day against gun violence.
But everybody who's standing behind me has been personally touched by a shooting or gun violence. And that's why these organizations came together. And we need to honor the work that they are doing by providing supports at the provincial government level to make sure that this work is successful, that we do bring an end, that we reduce and ultimately eliminate gun violence.
Glover was joined by advocates from Danforth Families for Safe Communities, One by One movement, Zero Gun Violence movement, and more. Advocates say one day is not enough and are pushing the federal government to draft stricter firearm ban legislation. This comes one day after Justin Trudeau and Raptors president Masai Ujiri declared June 1st as the National Day Against Gun Violence. Every year, Canadians are scammed out of millions of dollars by fraudulent callers. Almost 2 years ago, Canada's telecom regulators came up with a plan to tackle the problem. But as Sophia Harris shows us, it hasn't stopped the scammers from calling.
This call is from the Tax Department of Canada Revenue Agency.
Scam calls have become an infuriating part of life in Canada. So much so, this YouTuber in the Tamil community recently recorded one to warn new Canadians what to watch out for.
Now there is a charge going under your Amazon account for the $1,534.
I still get a lot of spam calls. That's why I felt, okay, it's important to spread this awareness.
There is an arrest warrant already issued under your name.
Many Canadians were hoping for an end to these calls in late 2021. That's when Canada's telecom regulator, the CRTC, mandated telecom companies adopt technology that detects suspicious callers.
It tells the recipient of the call that the call might not be a legitimate call.
But the technology doesn't work with all phones. And this expert says fraudsters are finding workarounds, like buying Canadian phone numbers, so the calls appear legit.
It is extremely simple to get a local phone number. There are apps that are available. You literally need a device, be able to download an app.
Scammers phone the innocent senior.
So these calls continue to take their toll. In the first 3 months of this year, Canadians lost more than $20 million in phone scams. The CRTC and Canada's major telecoms say they have taken added steps to combat fraudsters, such as blocking calls from fake phone numbers. Even so, the CRTC warns scam calls may never go away.
I have to be honest, it's a global problem. We won't be able to stop. With all the initiative that we bring forward, I think we're capable to reduce the number of the spam calls.
$99.99 will be debit from your bank account.
So brace yourself for more of these calls.
What are you trying to purchase?
But hopefully not as many. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
A graduation ceremony was held today to welcome Toronto's newest firefighters.
Understanding and being prepared for the challenges associated with emergency response in the diverse, complex, and vertical city that is Toronto places very real demands on every member of our team. The last 18 weeks of training provides each recruit with the foundation required to begin their respective journey from recruit to the rank of first class, and for many of you, into future leadership ranks.
103 firefighter recruits will graduate from their 18-week training program with the National Fire Protection Association. Graduates will be deployed to their respective crews and fire stations across the city. After spending 29 years in a maximum security prison in Ontario, murderer Paul Bernardo has been transferred to a medium security institution in Quebec.
The family's reaction was one of great disappointment and hurt. The biggest problem is simply advising us without explanation, and I find it disturbing. The public has a right to know. These are not private matters.
In 1995, Bernardo was convicted in the abduction, rape, torture, and murder of teenagers Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. He was declared a dangerous offender and given an indeterminate prison sentence. Correctional Service of Canada confirmed the move, but didn't say why he was transferred. The agency assures the public that he continues to be incarcerated in a secure institution with appropriate security perimeters and controls in place. Bernardo had parole hearings in 2018 and 2021, but was denied both times. A city in eastern Quebec has declared a state of emergency. 10,000 people in the Sept-Îles area have been told to leave their homes as 80 fires across the province burn out of control. Cobino Oduro has this update.
Smoking clouds above Sept-Îles, the hardest hit city in the province. Thousands forced to leave everything behind.
We don't know what might happen, especially if we can't come back to the city per se, then I guess people will be have to be moving really more out west and heading to outside the North Shore.
The Moisey River fire grew out of control. Residents ride buses out of Maniutanam. One woman says the smoke looked like a volcano eruption.
I'm scared a little bit, but I'm a woman strong, donc I don't really have to do.
There are only 600 to 700 spots in temporary shelters in Sept-Îles and some hotel rooms. Officials are asking nearby towns for places to stay.
Right now, all we can do is try to save them, and after that, try to help them for the l'hébergement, for housing. That's what we can do right now.
Quebec's fire prevention agency's 400 firefighters are deployed throughout the province, but the agency can only fight 30 fires. For now, 21 of them are priorities, meaning fires close to populated areas or important infrastructure. The hot weather is not helping.
For large fire, we need the help of the rain. It's very important. So it's something that we have to deal with.
Stéphane Caron says they are asking other provinces for help, but they are battling their own fires. So the hope is help will come from other countries like the United States. Cobino Oduro, CBC News, Montreal.
As wildfires rage across the country, thousands of families have been left shattered. In Halifax, Sam Sampson takes a look at the impact and how neighbors are trying to help.
This is the main evacuation center for people forced from their homes in the fire nearest Halifax and the surrounding area. It's full of resources for people who, A, don't have a place to go right now, but maybe just need a little bit of help. So yes, people can stay here overnight. This is also a region for some health care. Maybe you have a bit of an issue from the smoke with your lungs. You can get a look at that, or any other kind of health care. There's food, water, clothing for people, and mental health resources as well, because this is a very traumatic time for people who may have never expected something like this to happen. This is where a group of people got on 4 different buses today and toured their own neighborhood, really, to see what was left of their homes. Lots of damage in the surrounding area of Halifax, too. One man didn't want to go on that bus tour. Take a listen why.
I just feel like when I want to see my property, I want to be able to do it with my family and by ourselves and actually be physically able to go in and I don't know if I want to sort through stuff, but I'd just rather do it alone.
To receive the news that you've lost your home is just devastating news. So, that type of news has to be delivered with compassion and as much empathy as possible. So I'm just so sorry for those people that lost their homes and had their life turned upside down.
These mental health support workers are so important because it is such a tough time for some people. Now, there is some good news in the forecast. We have rain coming to Nova Scotia. It varies how much depending on where you are, but we're talking 5 to 25 millimeters over the next few days. And while that is a start, fire officials say it's not really enough to stop the fires, because they say, as they've seen in the past, it only takes a few days of really warm weather after that soggy weather to put us right back where we are.
It was hard to believe. We're expecting 3 or 4 or 5 days of significant rainfall. Based on the past, what we will see, we'll get 3 or 4 days of good rain, and all it takes is 3 or 4 days of warm weather, and we're right back here again.
So a very fluid situation in Nova Scotia. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Halifax. So Colette, let's dig in a little bit to what they could be expecting in the Atlantic.
Yeah, so we have the evidence here. They are getting that rainfall. It is widespread, but you heard what they're saying. You know, even a few days of this steady kind of rain, it helps, but watching carefully that we don't get the heat building back in behind it. And the other thing you're seeing here are some of the lightning strikes. These are off the storms that came through Quebec, and of course, lightning sparking because of the dry conditions, some of the fires there. And when we talk about the smoke in the atmosphere, you're seeing a lot of that here around Nova Scotia pushing towards PEI, which, by the way, is very dry as well. Hearing from our colleague Jay Scotland about the issues and fire danger there. And then some of that smoke from the fires in Quebec likely to come into our skies tomorrow. So although I'm forecasting sunny conditions, could be a little bit hazy as we get some of the forest fire smoke from Quebec into tomorrow. So our current temperatures, we know we have heat. We also know it's been very, very dry, but there are these pop-up thunderstorm cells I was showing you earlier in the show, and we're going to go into more detail on that in just a moment. But shall we check out as well? Not only did we have another record high today in terms of the temperature, it's now not only feeling like 35, we're at 36 with our humidex value. And a record, by the way, in Hamilton, there were many, but Hamilton up to 33 degrees today. So here are some of these cells. And if we overlay the lightning strikes, frequent lightning strikes, heavy downpours in here, gusty winds coming in too. And let's go in for a closer look, hearing from multiple viewers and thanking you for reaching out. Sharon, who lives on the border between Pickering and Toronto, said, yes, there's also some hail, small hail in here. And you can see this is tracking towards Toronto, towards the city. So right towards downtown, some of these heavier downpours, even though it is also pulling out over the water. We have some development to the west near Woodstock, pushing through Brantford, and then into cottage country as well, some activity here. So we need the rain. Probably could do without the lightning strikes because of how dry things are. And overnight tonight, if what you're looking for is relief from the temperatures, it's not so much tonight, but it is into tomorrow. We will be drying out here later on this evening, and 24 the high, and then Sunday just 22. And breezy winds from the east tomorrow, Miraval, so it is going to be a cooler feel for sure.
Well, compared to 36, yeah, I think so. Thanks, Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Students at Bristol Road Middle School had a special day today. They won the opportunity to control a space rover.
Every team chooses a different directive, makes a different number of movements with the rover, finds ice in different places, but they're all like this, so engaged, communicating between their teams, everything like that.
Students got to remotely control a Canadensis lunar rover in a moon-like environment. They interacted with technology that will be part of the upcoming Artemis space missions. Their mission was to work as a team driving the rover to find ice deposits in a mock lunar landscape. This was all part of the Lunar Rover Research Challenge, a national space competition offered by Let's Talk Science. Let's talk weather and some downpours, sudden downpours tonight.
Yeah, we are looking at active weather. The radar shows you all these pop-up thunderstorms that we have through cottage country. They were over towards eastern Ontario and then moving into eastern parts of the GTA in a cell that's headed right into the city. Now it is tracking towards the lake, but coming right across the DVP, essentially towards the Gardiner with some heavier downpours here. There are also the frequent lightning strikes and reports of some small hail. So with all of that, you get gusty winds too. So they're not everywhere, but we've seen these. They will die out as we get into the later evening hours, but you want to be aware of what's going on right now for the next hour or two. Overnight tonight, 20 degrees, more comfortable tomorrow, 24, although breezy with those winds off the east. And then Sunday, even a little cooler still.
Wednesday looks cold compared to what we had.
Yes, compared to today, certainly.
Thanks, Colette. Have a good weekend.
Welcome. You too.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you for joining us. Chris Glover has your next local news tonight at 11 after the National. Have a great weekend, everyone. Good night.